Ladies and gentlemen, we have arrived at the most important video in the whole series, the one about the biggest and most important franchise in licensed games. Now that should come as no surprise, Star Wars is king. It's the one franchise just about any programmer wants to work on, at least if they had to choose, and it's the one with the best standard of games. This top 10 won't just feature games that are good despite being licensed, it'll feature games that are regarded as amongst the best ever made, full stop. More than that though, it was Star Wars that turned licensed games into a marketable product. Without Star Wars, there wouldn't be licensed games. George Lucas showed everyone what marketing a film was really about, simply by applying Disney-style marketing to a live-action film. The toys, the comics, the books, even the holiday frickin' special, it all kept the film in the public eye, front and centre, helping it become the most successful film franchise ever. A Star Wars screening wasn't just a screening, it was an event. I mean, do you know how much Star Wars is actually worth? Over $30 billion, most of which, until very recently, went directly into Lucas's pocket. Nice deal if you can get it, hey? Anyway, video games became a big thing around the same time as the Star Wars boom, and they started making money. And so, with everyone following Lucas's example, hoping to make moolah beyond their wildest dreams and looking for every single possible avenue to do so, attaching licenses to video games seemed a natural thing. Which is why licensed games have basically been around since the dawn of video games. Star Wars is how it all started. It only took 22 videos to answer that question, didn't it? So in short, whenever you sat down playing some god-awful game where, I don't know, Bart Simpson beats the shit out of Santa's little helper, just remember, you have Star Wars to thank. Right, now it's time to start going through this lot. All the action games, the strategy titles, the RPGs, first-person shooters, even the odd beat-em-up here and there. A lot of games. There's well over 50, possibly even 100 Star Wars games kicking about. And that's not a joke. Now I haven't played them all, or even close to them all, but I've got 10 of them here anyway that are amongst my favourites. Oh, and in case you're wondering, I'm not a fan of Star Wars, not even in the slightest, so I'm obviously very well qualified for this job. But anyway, let's go for it. Number 10. The top 10 kicks off with a little trip to the arcade, although this might not have been the game you were expecting to see. This is Star Wars Trilogy Arcade, a game by Sega from 1998. This game is one of the last I really remember playing in the arcades. Not too long after this, they just seemed to die out over here in my little part of the world. It's a pretty damn good one, filled with flashy recreations of the biggest battles from the trilogy, Yavin, Hoth and Endor. However, the thing that most people probably remember about this game is the lightsaber battles with Darth Vader, which were really quite awesome. Now you might look at this and just see a load of quick time events, and indeed you could look at the whole game and just see a souped up whale shooter. But back then this felt amazing, as if you'd been dragged straight into the movies. Arcade games should always have a bit of spectacle about them, and well, this game certainly delivers on that front. Number 9. The Star Wars games can be cut quite neatly into two little piles, those that are based off the films, and others that deal with the expanded universe. Games based on books and the like, or just original stories in the same world. And again, expanded universes didn't really exist in film until Star Wars came about. The Jedi Knight series is right up at the top of the EU, a very successful series that mostly deals with Kyle Katarn, a hard-nosed mercenary and on-off Jedi. Oddly enough, you don't play as him here, instead you're stuck with some snot-nosed little shit. But Jedi Academy is quite fun all the same. It's a good little first and third person game, the main appeal of which is flipping around and wrecking fools with lightsabers. Jedi Academy is here as opposed to Jedi Outcast, mainly because it gives you that saber right from the off and just lets you have some fun with it. I mean, once you actually try some shooting, I kinda feel like the game goes to crap a little. It's just not that good an FPS. However, the lightsaber action, spot on. Don't worry too much though, because there will be a bit more Jedi Knight action later on. Number 8. Now, X-Wing holds a pretty special place in the Star Wars pageantry. It's perhaps the first serious Star Wars simulator. Before X-Wing, the majority of games in the franchise had been arcade affairs or platformers. There's great stuff to be found there, obviously, but X-Wing was one of the first to probe a little bit deeper. Space combat was a big hit around this time, what with Wind Commander and the like kicking about, and so it stood to reason that Star Wars should get in on the act. And when it did, there weren't any half measures. X-Wing was truly brilliant for the time, getting to grips with the fighter, carefully managing your speed, scanning ships, taking part in huge dogfights. You feel as though you're a small but important part of the Rebels' cause, which is exactly what they were going for, and it was quite stunning in 1993. Now, if I'm honest, it's not held up brilliantly. However, this is less to do with age and more to do with what came soon after, but that's a story for another entry. X-Wing deserves all that nice, respectful, historical praise though. Ain't no doubt about it. Number 7. Everything's a bit nice so far, don't you think? So enough of that, it's time to be a bit controversial. Straight in at number 7, Knights of the Old Republic. Now that might shock you, because KOTOR is huge. In just about all the lists I've looked at prior to making my own, KOTOR has placed it number 1. It's a classic amongst Western RPGs, massively influential to boot. I mean, just how many games employed light and dark sides in its wake? Most would consider it the best licensed game of all damn time, without a second thought. And yet I just kinda wouldn't, really. Now, I'm not asking to be heard out here, because it's fairly simple. I'm just not that big on BioWare's RPGs. The effort, the words, the construction is always just immaculate, but I find it all a bit too clinical. It's like sitting in a dentist's chair. I've played this a few times now, and honestly, it's never too long before I just start getting bored and shut it off. Turns out you can almost do too much in these games. And yes, before you ask, I have the same problem with Mass Effect. I have a great deal of respect for KOTOR. A lot of people love it, and the craft simply cannot be denied, but in the end, it's not really for me. Please feel free to flame the fuck out of me in the comments, by the way. Number 6. Especially when, just to really hammer it home, I put the kids game one place ahead of KOTOR. Lego Star Wars. A game where there's no penalties, no danger, no disasters or anything like that. It's all just a load of bricks clacking about together. And as far as I'm concerned, it's as fun as all get out. A game you can dive into immediately and just have a bit of a bash about in for half an hour, clearly made with lots of love for the films. The Lego style is just, well, charming. And you can play it with absolutely anybody. It's a great equaliser. Because, you know, it can't be denied. People see these games and, damn it, they want to join in. And of course, you can. Someone who's never played a game in their whole frickin' life could have fun with this. So yes, it's casual, it's not a hardcore game or anything like that, and that's absolutely fine. Lego Star Wars has got tons of heart. The Star Wars games seem to have more of that than almost all the other Lego games around, in fact. It does what it does so damn well, it just couldn't not be on the list. Number 5. See? I told you we'd see the Jedi Knight series again. Now, you probably didn't expect it to be this one though, did you? Dark Forces is the first game to put you in the shoes of that Kyle Katarn character, the guy who does whatever it is he does. In this instance, he'll be killing Imperial dudes so long as someone gives him a decent wage. Now, this is of course a very old first-person shooter. Dark Forces came out in 1995, only a couple of years or so after Doom. So you've got the 2D enemies, the maze-like stages, the keycard hunts, the pumping MIDI soundtrack, the rickety controls. I mean, mouse-look? What the hell is that, man? And of course I'm a big fan of all this stuff. I've got lots of time for old FPSs, and Dark Forces is one of my favourites. You know, while it's nice to have things like cutscenes, presentation and plot, you just can't knock a game where there's simply a whole army of stormtroopers milling about and you have to survive, thrive, and then frack. I mean, what else do you need, right? Grab that blaster and go bonk some heads. You know it makes sense. I mean, sure, you could just play Doom or Duke or Triad, but Dark Forces was a damn good one too, and I reckon it deserves a bit more recognition. Number 4. Okay, the top 4 games in this list. Now they're all classics, top brass. The iconoclastic choices are pretty much over. But there's still plenty of fun to be had, because a game like Battlefront 2 gets the girls for a reason. It's that damn smooth and that damn good. Even if it is basically Lego Star Wars with added explosions. Now that is of course not a criticism. What I mean is that Battlefront 2 caters for everybody, no matter what you want to do on the field. You want to go and ride the skies in an X-Wing? You can. How about taking command of a bloody massive walker? Let's go. Race through combat and scatter limbs about as a Jedi? It's your game, you do it. And of course you could always just be a regular trooper. One of many, probably lucky if they last a couple of minutes. Battlefront 2 is naturally a lot like Battlefield. It's a great game because it does so many things so damn well. Whether you want to be a kamikaze style hero or just a supporting medic. So it kinda makes sense for DICE to be the guys in charge of reviving the series next year. Pandemic's work on it though? Well, it'll have to be a pretty damn good game to beat it. Number 3. Jesus, 3 FPSs in a row. This list is starting to look like Machinima made it. But then they're just so good. And I quite like tactical shooters. Now of course most tactical shooters aren't actually all that tactical. It's usually just a case of saying go do that or kill that guy there and that's it. Super anal retentive games like, say, SWAT 4 are few and far between. But then, to be honest, I'm okay with that. I'll take the sort of thing that Republic Commando does, every time. But aside from having the sort of quality you would expect from such a game, Republic Commando actually does play around with the franchise a bit, I feel. It actually feels quite dark and brooding. The Clone Wars setting almost seems to give the developers a chance to mix Star Wars with aliens at points. It's one of the most un-Star Wars-like games on the list. But it is, of course, magnificent. When you do a fresh take on a familiar setting as well as this game does, ain't no one's exactly going to complain, are they? It's certainly the best looking Star Wars game by far, which isn't bad for a game that's nearly 10 years old at this point. And hey, who doesn't get a kick out of telling people to go die for them over there? It's definitely a thrill in real life, and it's a good feeling in games too. Number 2. Much like the Star Trek list, the majority of all these fancy, namby modern games were beaten by something that's 30 years old. One of the games that started it all. The original Star Wars arcade game was one of the first that really demonstrated the power of remaking your franchise in game form, because this was a big frickin' deal back then. I mean, thinking back on my top 10 of Golden Age arcade games I did a while back, I can't believe I missed this one out because holy hell is it good. I mean, it's funny, really. I mean, you look at this, and you look at the arcade game we started the video with, and you can see that not a great deal changed. The bulk of the 98 game was still flying on rails, taking down TIE fighters, exactly the same as this game is. Hell, the first level of Star Wars Trilogy is basically this game, complete with taking down the Death Star at the end. But for all those polygons, it just can't match those damn vectors, cutting through your screen like, well, like something really sharp. And then you get all the voice samples to boot, not to mention the best explosion in gaming history this side of Missile Command. Now this wasn't actually the first Star Wars licensed game, but it's the one that people remember, and it still plays as well as it did so long ago. The Star Wars arcade game is timeless in a way most of these other games just can't ever hope to achieve. In the end though, it didn't quite make the top spot. So, what did? Number 1. I would say that it's appropriate that the biggest video on the list should finish with quite possibly the kin of all licensed games. Now let's recap. As mentioned previously, 1993's X-Wing changed the game a little. It drove the Star Wars franchise away from action and platform games and more into simulation games that were right on the cutting edge. There's a reason why almost all of the titles here are PC games, and it has a hell of a lot to do with X-Wing. However, X-Wing had the misfortune of being entirely superseded no more than a year later. As good as it was, the sequel? Well, it was even better. I am, of course, talking about X-Wing's polar opposite and mutual enemy, straight from the dark side, 1994's TIE Fighter. Now one might think that making TIE Fighter would simply be a matter of taking everything from X-Wing, changing a few labels and giving the whole thing an Imperial sheen. But really it was so much more. It took X-Wing up into the stratosphere. It's more than just the greatest space shooter ever made, it's arguably one of the best games of all goddamn time. I would go that far. And of course there's plenty of reasons for that, so I'll try and go through a couple of the more special ones. TIE Fighter is great because you get such a unique perspective on things. The majority of games cast you as the hero, and quite a few make you the villain. And then a game like X-Wing where you're perhaps not the main hero, but still supporting a good cause, well that's not quite as common, but still fairly standard. How often though do you play as a foot soldier in the evil army? I mean without eventually being betrayed so that you turn into the hero. Because your job is to crush the rebel scum and help maintain dictatorial rule over the Empire. You are a very small cog in a massive machine. You're not expected to live very long, no one's going to give a fuck when you die, I mean unless you manage to rise to captain before your inevitable death, chances are nobody's even going to remember your name. I mean, as soon as you start the game, you get a strange feeling that's only upped by the intrigue and plots that are revealed to you as you rise through the ranks. I mean, there isn't much storytelling or script, but what's here is damn good. And so, while you are playing as the bad guys, you still feel like you're the good guys anyway. Because after all, the Empire didn't consider themselves evil, did they? It was for the world's own good. And you'll gladly lay down your ship and die for that cause. In the game, I mean. X-Wing has a fine plot too, but there's no denying it. The dark side, quite simply, has more fun. And of course, there's the action itself. A complex control scheme that's not difficult to pick up, but is very hard to master. Which is good, because in a simulation like this, you should have to actually learn how to be a good pilot through experience. You have to pay careful attention, managing your shields and weapons, leading your targets, not simply going full throttle all the time. It's a slow but worthwhile process, and it keeps you going through all the glorious missions. Because every time you fly, you get the chance to prove yourself in an epic space battle. Now the part you play might vary. Sometimes you might find yourself on the fringes of the battle, whether it's because your ship's nearly kaput or you just can't find any decent opportunities. And then other times, you might play a pivotal role. That one daring sortie, one well-placed torpedo, one rebel shuttle struck down just as it was about to enter hyperspace. Woohoo! You'd celebrate that shit, wouldn't you? At least for a while, until your officer called you in for the debriefing. Yeah, lucky shot, dog meat. Now get your ass back in the cockpit. Or words to that effect. It's amazing that a game makes you feel so great when you're so low on the totem pole. But whenever the bogies start hitting the area and the glorious dynamic soundtrack rises to a crescendo, a rush of adrenaline just courses through the body. Something's gonna happen. You don't know what it is, but you're gonna be as ready as you can be for it. And that's the sort of feeling you want in a game. It may not be real, but the game, combined with your mind, almost makes it so. TIE Fighter's the sort of game that you relive in your head after you finish playing it. If you're so inclined, you could even bore the shit out of people with stories of how you successfully crushed the rebels' resistance and bombed their outpost. And everyone might well back away slowly, but what do they know? They weren't there, man. Now, the A to Z of licensed games has been a long and hard project. I would kind of liken it to diamond mining, looking for all the mud, sticking all the flawed bits of carbon to one side, just in the hope that you'll find that one flawless example that's perfect in every way. And all I can say for now is that, at last, I have found that perfect example. So, it's all downhill from here. But don't worry, because we still have quite a few videos to go yet. In the next video we'll be mopping up S, which still means there's a fair few big franchises to cover. What Spider-Man games will we see? Is there any chance that we'll see a half-decent Superman game? And geez, well that's only one very small part of it. We still have a lot to do in this letter alone. So many games, so little time. But we'll make it. For now though, thanks for watching, and wherever you are, whoever you be, have a good one, take care, and I'll see you next time.